The cafeteria buzzed with laughter, but not the warm kind. It was sharp, bitter, the kind that slices through a room like broken glass. "You get that patch from a toy store, lady," a man's voice spat, loud enough to turn heads. Three men, all in press suits, leaned across the cafeteria table, smirking. They pointed at the patch on the woman's jacket, a faded cloth insignia, stitched carefully onto the shoulder. It was an old military unit's patch, frayed at the edges, the colors dulled by years and stories long buried. One of them nudged his friend, his grin wide with arrogance. "Bet she just bought it to look tough. Probably couldn't even pass a basic fitness test." The woman didn't flinch. She stood still, her lunch tray balanced perfectly in her hands, eyes fixed somewhere beyond the smallness of their words. But the whispers spread like oil on water. "She's too small to be one of them. Probably a poser. She's not the type." Their words were sharp needles, aiming to puncture. Yet she absorbed every one without lowering her gaze, without offering them the fight they were hungry for. Her name was Evelyn Hale, and she had worn that patch long before their polished shoes had ever touched a military base. The patch wasn't just fabric. It was a scar stitched in thread. It belonged to a unit few dared to mention out loud, a recon battalion known for impossible missions, the kind that often had no return ticket. But to them, these men, it was just an accessory. Evelyn set her tray down gently. The cafeteria hummed around her, indifferent. The other patrons heard, but they didn't intervene. No one wanted to step into the fire. Easier to watch, easier to pretend. She sat alone. The suits laughed a little louder, emboldened by her silence. What they didn't know was that silence was her sharpest weapon. Years ago, Evelyn had traded the comfort of routine for something brutal and raw. The memory still clung to her skin like the dust of a foreign battlefield. Her first deployment had been a furnace. The desert sun pressed down like punishment. She remembered the metallic taste of the air, the fine grit that coated her tongue, the unrelenting buzz of distant rotors. But the heat wasn't the hardest part. It was the nights. Nights when the silence screamed. When she sat with her squad, their backs to crumbling walls, waiting for the dark to spit something deadly in their direction. That's when she learned to be small, to be still, to dissolve into silence until the danger passed. But not all danger passes. Her unit had been ambushed during their final recon. She remembered the sound, bone and steel, the explosion folding the sky in half. Her commanding officer had gone down in front of her, his radio still clutched in his hand. Evelyn pulled him to cover, pressing against his torn uniform, whispering a lie she wanted to believe. "You're fine. You're fine. Stay with me." But the blood never stopped. The sand drank it all. He had given her the patch days before. "Sew it on. You've earned it." His voice had cracked with pride. When they shipped her home, the weight of that patch was heavier than her duffel. But these men in the cafeteria, these strangers who had never heard a mortar whistle past their heads, they couldn't see that weight. They only saw fabric. Their mocking didn't stop. They found new ways to belittle her as the days passed. She probably served coffee, not combat. One sneered as he passed her table. "Patch collector," another whispered, just loud enough. But Evelyn's silence held steady. It wasn't the brittle kind that breaks. It was the kind that roots deep, the kind that waits. One afternoon, as she stepped outside for air, she overheard them planning to confront her publicly, to expose her as a fraud. They were certain. She wasn't one of them. "She's never seen a battlefield." "I can tell," the tallest of the three said, his voice dripping with certainty. "Real soldiers carry themselves differently." Evelyn didn't interrupt them. She just walked past, her boots pressing steady into the gravel. Each step hummed with memory. The cafeteria filled again the next day. This time, more eyes followed her. The rumors had spread beyond the trio. People waited, some with curiosity, others with amusement. The tallest one blocked her path. "Nice patch," he said, slowly, like he was giving her a final chance to confess. "You know what that insignia stands for?" he pressed. Evelyn looked at him, her gaze calm, not defiant. A silence hung between them like stretched wire. "Real operators," he continued. "They earn that. It's not a prop." Evelyn said nothing. She didn't need to. Another voice cut in from the corner. "I know that patch." A man in civilian clothes stood, his hands trembling slightly as he pushed away his chair. His eyes burned, Not with anger, but recognition. That's Recon 4. Black Sand Unit. The suits glanced at each other, suddenly uncertain. The man continued, his voice thick with something heavy. I had a brother in that unit. They didn't come back from Black Sand Ridge. Except for one. A woman. She dragged two of them out after the ambush. They said she wouldn't talk about it. That she never wanted the medals. Just wanted to go home. His gaze locked on Evelyn. Was that you? Evelyn's eyes softened, the faintest nod passing like a ripple. The room quieted. Even the air seemed to still. The man stepped closer, his voice breaking. Thank you. I was too young to enlist. I never got to say thank you to the one who saved them. The suits shifted, their bravado leaking away like air from a punctured tire. But Evelyn wasn't finished. She slowly rolled up her sleeve. First, they saw the scar, a brutal, jagged reminder of the day that changed everything. And then, higher on her arm, they saw the ink-dotted tattoo. Coordinates. A date. Black Sand Ridge. The cafeteria watched in silence as the truth unfolded, not through arguments, but through the undeniable language of scars. One of the suits mumbled, his voice a hollow echo. We didn't know. Evelyn met his gaze, her words soft but solid. You didn't ask. The man who had recognized her took a slow step forward and saluted. That it wasn't theatrical. It wasn't for show. That it was for her. One by one. The few who understood, who had worn patches of their own, stood from their tables. A quiet chain reaction. Some saluted, some simply stood in respect, and soon, those who had laughed felt the weight of their own silence. The cafeteria was no longer buzzing. It was reverent. Evelyn gave a small nod, accepting the moment, but not clinging to it. She turned, her steps steady, her shoulders light, the patch gleaming softly on her jacket. As she walked away, her words lingered in the space she left behind. Some patches are earned in silence. The loudest ones usually aren't. It was a sentence that would be repeated in that cafeteria for years. Some heroes don't need parades. Some battles are fought without witnesses. And some stories don't begin with a cheer, but with a scar. Evelyn Hale taught them that. And maybe she just taught us, too. Where are you watching from? Have you ever met someone like Evelyn? Let me know in the comments. And if these stories move you, subscribe to hear more untold moments of silent courage. Sometimes the quietest people carry the loudest truths. Iconic quotes from the story. Some patches are earned in silence. The loudest ones usually aren't. You didn't ask. Some heroes don't need parades. Some battles are fought without witnesses. But Evelyn's story didn't end in that cafeteria. She would move on to other places, other quiet rooms where patches like hers were still misunderstood. She never chased recognition. She never corrected the whispers. She didn't need to. Her strength wasn't in proving herself to strangers. It was in knowing who she was when no one was watching. And somewhere, right now, someone else is carrying their own patch, their own silent battle, walking among us, unnoticed. Maybe it's the woman quietly helping her community. Maybe it's the man who never speaks of his service. Maybe it's the child learning to stand tall in a world that doubts them. Their stories matter. Even if we never hear them, maybe the next time we see a patch, a scar, or a quiet figure walking away, we'll choose to ask instead of assume. And maybe that's where true respect begins.